Waiter rolled his eyes at Big Shaq, then realized he was talking to the boss. In a place where appearance determines respect, one man enters without fanfare, dressed like he doesn't belong. But when silence becomes louder than status, an entire restaurant and a proud waitress must face a truth far deeper than reputation. A story of quiet strength, shattered assumptions, and the dignity that cannot be disguised. Before we start the story, write in the comments from which part of the world you're watching today. It started with sneakers, worn gray sneakers that whispered against marble as the man walked through the glass doors of La Lumière. He didn't belong. Not here. Not in that outfit. The hostess barely lifted her eyes. She had greeted a film producer 10 minutes ago with a double kiss on each cheek. The man who now stood before her wore a simple gray t-shirt, slightly wrinkled, and dark track pants. His shoulders were broad, his presence quiet, but there was no watch on his wrist, no assistant at his side, no reservations in her book. He had not come to impress. And that was mistake number one. "Table for one?" she asked, already assuming the answer. "Yes, please." Her smile was hollow. She handed the situation over to a waitress walking by, Emma. Emma took one look at him and made her decision before he finished smiling. He wasn't from here. Not from this world of curated plates, private valet service, and perfume-scented napkins. His calm demeanor irritated her. That kind of confidence had to be earned, or worn. "Right this way," she said flatly. She led him to the table nearest the swinging kitchen doors, the worst seat in the house. Her co-workers knew it, but no one questioned her. She often spoke her judgments in quiet tones and raised eyebrows, not loud words. Emma believed some people didn't need to be thrown out. They just had to be shown the door in subtler ways. He sat down without protest. 20 minutes passed. She refilled his water twice, took his order slowly. When he asked for recommendations, she listed the most expensive items, her tone edged with a question. "Can you afford that?" She didn't know his name, didn't ask. To her, he was a mistake in the system, a glitch in the fabric of their fine dining exclusivity. Across the room, a couple, regulars, whispered to each other. They noticed. Not everything, but enough. The posture, the patience, the absence of reaction to Emma's coldness. The man had ordered the chef's signature steak. When it came, he thanked her quietly. No sarcasm, no complaints. That too irritated Emma. By dessert, something shifted. A soft hush had spread through the restaurant. Other servers began to glance more often at the corner table by the kitchen doors. A bartender squinted. Someone from the kitchen poked their head out for a second too long. Emma was still ignoring it. She walked past the table with practiced indifference. But then something happened that didn't fit. The man, still seated, turned to her gently and asked, "Is there something I did wrong?" Not angry, not defensive, just calm. The way he said it left no room for excuses. Emma blinked. "No. Why?" "You've been distant." He smiled, but there was a tiredness in his eyes. Not weakness, something heavier. A man used to being watched, but not seen. She shrugged. "We're busy." That was a lie. It was 2:30. Lunch rush had ended an hour ago. 10 minutes later, the manager walked in. Tall, sharply dressed, his tie as straight as his expression. He scanned the room. His eyes landed on the man in the corner, and he stopped. A flash of recognition passed over his face. He walked straight to the table, fast. "Sir," he said, voice lowering, "I'm so sorry. I wasn't informed you were here." Emma was standing close. She turned slightly. The manager extended his hand. "It's an honor, truly. I had no idea. If I had known, we would have—" The man raised a hand gently. "It's all right. I'm just here for lunch." The manager's face shifted with something between panic and awe. "Of course, Mr. O'Neill. Please forgive us for the inconvenience." Emma froze. Her mouth dried instantly. O'Neill. She looked at the man again. Really looked. His height, his build, the shape of his face. The name suddenly clicked like a thunderclap in her memory. Not from a tabloid, not from gossip, from history, from television, from moments her father once narrated as legendary. This was not just a customer. This was him. The silence in the restaurant deepened. A quiet wave passed from table to table. Phones stayed tucked away, out of respect, or maybe out of uncertainty. Emma stood, hands suddenly clammy, her heart pounding in her throat. She tried to speak. I didn't know." He looked at her. It wasn't anger in his eyes. It wasn't pity, either. It was silence. A silence so complete that it said more than any words ever could. And then, he did something that turned the temperature of the room. He smiled. Not to forgive, not to dismiss, but to invite a deeper question. Why had it taken a name to change the way people saw him? That was the beginning of what no one in La Lumière would ever forget. And Emma? She would spend the rest of the day and the weeks to come grappling with a lesson that no training, no rule book, no polished service manual had ever prepared her for. The lesson of seeing. Really seeing. Emma didn't sleep that night. She told herself it was just embarrassment, but it wasn't. It was something deeper, like a mirror had been held up to her, and what she saw wasn't flattering. Her brain kept replaying it. His face, the calm in his voice, the way the manager's tone had shifted with just one name, and the look. That quiet, steady look that didn't accuse, but saw. The next morning at La Lumière began like any other. The staff moved with rehearsed efficiency. White tablecloths were smoothed, wine glasses inspected, music set to just the right volume, not loud enough to distract, not soft enough to disappear. Emma avoided the others. She could feel something had changed. It wasn't mockery, not yet, but the air around her was thinner. "Did you hear what happened yesterday?" One of the younger waiters whispered behind the espresso machine. "It was him, right? That was really him?" "Shaquille O'Neal. Can you believe it? Just walked in, no PR, no cameras, sat by the kitchen like it was nothing." Emma walked past them silently. They lowered their voices but didn't stop. She knew her name was wrapped up in that story now. Not because of the service, but because of what she had failed to see. By noon, the restaurant began to fill. A few guests had already asked about yesterday's incident, pretending it was curiosity, not gossip. The manager dismissed it with a smile. "Just a visit from a very distinguished guest," he said, brushing past the uncomfortable parts. Emma noticed something strange as she worked that day. People were watching her. Not openly, but with sidelong glances, measuring. She was no longer invisible in the way she had preferred. Her actions were being evaluated now, not just her posture or uniform. At one point, a woman at table 4 leaned toward her and asked, Do you get celebrities in here often? Emma hesitated. Sometimes, she said carefully. The woman smiled. Must be hard to tell who's who. I guess appearances don't say much, do they? It wasn't a question. Mid-afternoon, a printed note was left on the staff bulletin board. Mandatory team meeting at 5:30. Do not miss. No explanation. But everyone knew. Emma felt her pulse climb. When 5:30 came, the dining room was empty, cleared of customers. The lights were lowered. Staff stood around in loose circles, servers, hosts, kitchen leads, and the manager. And then he walked in. Not the manager. Him. Shaquille O'Neal. No fanfare, no entourage. Same clothes as yesterday. A plain sweatshirt this time, and the same old sneakers. Everyone went still. Even the air. Emma's heart slammed. The manager stepped forward. Mr. O'Neal, thank you for coming. Shaq raised a hand gently. Please just call me Shaquille. There was something disarming about his presence. His size made him impossible to miss, but his energy made it impossible to look away. He looked at the group, then calmly at Emma, and he began to speak. I've been to places all over the world, he said. Restaurants, hotels, locker rooms, streets. I've been greeted like royalty, and I've been treated like nobody. He paused. Yesterday, I didn't come here to test anyone. I just wanted lunch. The room stayed silent. I sat in the worst seat, got the cold shoulder, but none of that really bothered me. He looked again toward Emma, not with anger, but with a gaze that demanded attention. What stayed with me was something different, something I've seen too many times before. It's the way people decide who you are before you've said a word, based on your shoes, your clothes, your silence. He folded his hands. But here's the thing. Everyone you serve, every person walking through those doors, is someone. Doesn't matter what they're wearing. Doesn't matter if you know their name. You don't lose anything by showing respect. But you risk a lot when you don't. A few heads lowered. A server near the back cleared his throat. Shaq smiled faintly. I wasn't upset. I've learned to carry myself differently. You don't need noise to make a point. Sometimes silence speaks loud enough. His eyes returned to Emma one last time. And to the person who served me yesterday, thank you. The words landed like a thunderclap. Emma blinked, stunned. Thank you, he continued. You reminded me of something important, that the lesson still needs teaching. Then he added softer, and that I still need patience too. The meeting ended with no applause, no dramatic closure, just a hum of thoughtfulness that would stay in the room long after the doors closed. Emma stood frozen. After most people had trickled out, she turned and found him still standing near the bar, speaking to the manager. She walked over, every step slow and deliberate. He looked at her before she said a word. I'm sorry, she whispered. Shaq nodded. I know. I judged you. I saw what you wore and thought I knew what you were. He nodded again. A lot of people do. I've never felt so small. Shaq's voice was gentle. Sometimes we need to feel small to remember how to be big. He wasn't trying to humiliate her. He wasn't even trying to teach anymore. He was just telling the truth. That night, after he left, Emma sat alone in the break room, her notepad in hand, The same one where she used to jot down rude customers or impossible orders. She opened to a fresh page. At the top, she wrote 3 words: "See, don't guess." And underneath it, "Respect costs nothing." But pretending to know someone? That can cost everything. 2 days later, a man in a navy suit walked into La Lumière. He was slim, with graying temples and polished cufflinks that caught the afternoon light. He asked for a table for one and was seated by the window. Emma approached him cautiously, not because of his attire, but because of what she now carried inside. Every guest was a question now, not an answer. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to La Lumière. May I bring you something to start?" The man looked up, meeting her eyes. "Just water, please." His voice was soft, his face unreadable. Emma nodded and walked to the bar. The memory of the other man, him, still lingered in the fabric of the restaurant. Not like a ghost, but like a shift in the walls themselves. Staff moved differently. Even the manager had changed. Polite had become respectful, distant had become attentive, and guests noticed. That's what made it strange when the man in the navy suit looked over his shoulder, scanning the room. He wasn't impatient. He was watching, measuring. Emma returned with the water, placing it carefully. "Have you dined with us before?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Yes, once, a long time ago." In the kitchen, Chef Alain was plating a sea bass with lemon oil and microgreens. He glanced at Emma as she walked past. "Is he someone?" he asked quietly. Emma didn't answer, not because she didn't know, but because she didn't assume. Meanwhile, whispers started again. This time, not about Shaquille O'Neal, but about what he had done. The meeting had turned into a story, and stories grow faster than guests. One version said he tipped $10,000 and left without a word. Another claimed he'd requested to speak with Emma privately, offered her a job, or perhaps a warning. The truth wasn't exciting enough for rumors. It was quiet, like him. Emma ignored the whispers. She knew the real lesson was being watched now, by the guests. People began testing them. A woman arrived in a delivery uniform, claiming to be meeting a client. She was seated with courtesy, served without hesitation. Later, she returned and left a handwritten thank you note. "I was just checking," she wrote. "You passed." The staff began to understand. Reputation wasn't built by who came in. It was built by how they were treated before anyone knew their name. That afternoon, the man in the navy suit called Emma over. "I'll take the duck," he said. "And if I could ask, were you here when the basketball player visited?" Emma hesitated. "I was." He nodded slowly. "Did you know who he was when he arrived?" "No." "And you do now?" "Yes." He seemed to be thinking about something, staring out the window. Then he said, "And did it change how you felt about him?" Emma exhaled. "No. It changed how I feel about myself." The man finally smiled, barely. "Good answer." Elsewhere in the dining room, a conversation sparked at a corner table. A pair of lawyers in expensive suits were arguing quietly about whether they should have recognized the man sooner. One said, "It was the humility that threw me off. I assumed people like him needed to be noticed." The other replied, "No, it's people like us who need to notice." Their server brought the check and caught the end of that sentence. It stuck with her for hours. By evening, something else happened. A woman in her 60s came in wearing a wide hat, sunglasses, and old clothes. She walked slowly, leaning on a cane. No reservation, just a quiet request for a small table and hot tea. Emma seated her without question, brought her the tea, asked if she needed anything else. The woman smiled. "Young lady, this place feels different than it used to." Emma didn't know how to respond. The woman continued. "I came here a few years ago, waited 20 minutes before anyone brought me water. I wasn't wearing the right shoes, I suppose." "I'm sorry," Emma said, meaning it. The woman waved a hand gently. "Not your fault. But today, it's different. Today, it feels like the room sees me." She paused. "And do you know who I am?" Emma shook her head. "Good," the woman said. "That means you're treating me like a person, not a profile." She finished her tea and left no tip, but a note, folded once. Emma opened it behind the bar later. It read, "You made me feel visible. That's worth more than dollars." At closing, the manager stood in the middle of the now empty dining room, sleeves rolled up. "Something's shifted," he said quietly to the team. Emma stood nearby, polishing glasses. "It's not a trend. It's not a rule. It's a posture." He looked toward her. "Emma, you started this. Not in the way you expected, but you did." She nodded. It was not praise. It was responsibility. He continued, "Let's make this the new standard." No applause followed, just silent agreement. At home that night, Emma opened her phone, stared at the news story still circulating. Shaquille O'Neal leaves quiet lesson in Beverly Hills. She didn't click it. She didn't need to. She already knew the ending, but more importantly, she knew her new beginning. Chapter 4. Unmasking the Giant. The next time he returned, no one recognized him at first. It was nearly 3 weeks after the first visit. The sky was low and gray. Rain tapped gently against the tall windows of La Lumière. The lunch crowd was thin. Weather tended to filter out the half-committed. Emma was restocking the wine cart when she saw him enter. No fanfare, just a hooded sweatshirt and those same sneakers, edges still frayed. He carried himself like a man who'd been here 1,000 times, but never expected to be noticed. This time, he didn't go unnoticed. The hostess rose from her seat the moment the door opened. Her face registered recognition halfway through his approach. "Good afternoon, Mr. O'Neal," she said, voice suddenly careful. He offered a warm nod. "Afternoon. Just lunch, if you don't mind." The manager appeared within moments, as if summoned by instinct alone. He approached quickly, but respectfully. "Welcome back, sir. We're honored." Emma stood nearby, trying not to react too visibly, but inside her chest, her pulse ticked faster. Shaquille O'Neal looked around, scanning the nearly empty restaurant. "Same table as last time," he said. There was a beat of hesitation. "Of course," the manager said, though his voice dipped with confusion. "But if you'd prefer—" "No," Shaq said, gentle but firm. "I'd like the same seat, if it's open." It was. When Emma approached with the menu, he smiled at her. She returned it without fear this time. "Welcome back," she said simply. He glanced up at her and tilted his head slightly, as if assessing a puzzle he already knew the answer to. Looks like the place runs different now." Emma gave a faint nod. "People saw what happened." "No," he corrected. "People saw how you handled it after." She didn't know what to say. He took the menu from her hand. "I'll have whatever you recommend." he said. She blinked. Seriously? Seriously. After taking the order, Emma walked back toward the kitchen, where a cook named Ramon gave her a low whistle. He's back, huh? She nodded. Manager told me what happened last time, Ramon said. Said it changed the way he thinks about hiring. Wants people who listen now, not just people who perform. Emma didn't answer. The words struck her deeper than expected. As lunch went on, a few guests trickled in. A family with 2 young children, an older couple in golf attire. No one disturbed the quiet giant by the kitchen doors. But the air had changed again, not from fear, from respect and curiosity. One of the children at the family table stared openly at Shaq for minutes before whispering, "Mom, that guy's huge." Shaq looked over and gave the boy a slow wink. The boy's mouth dropped open. His mother mouthed thank you with a smile. By the time Emma returned with the main course, the manager stood nearby, clearly nervous. "Mr. O'Neill," he began, "I'd be honored to comp your meal today, as a gesture of gratitude." Shaq looked up at him. "Why?" The manager hesitated. "Well, your last visit helped us improve. We're grateful." Shaq leaned back, quiet for a moment. "Don't," he said finally. "I came here as a guest, not a symbol." The manager nodded quickly, swallowing his discomfort. "And don't treat me special. Just treat me right, the same way you'd treat anyone." "Yes, sir." "And not sir, just Shaquille." After the meal, Shaq stood to leave. Before he reached the door, he turned. "Emma," he said, "could I speak to the staff again? Just 5 minutes. I'll be quick." She blinked. "Of course." The word spread quickly. Cooks wiped their hands. Servers removed aprons. The manager called for the front doors to be held. It felt less like a speech, more like a circle forming. Shaquille stood in the center, surrounded by people who had watched his name ripple through the news, but now saw him as something more complicated, more human. "I won't take long," he said. I just came to thank you all again." He looked slowly around the group. "Not for the mistake, but for the recovery." A few heads nodded. "It's easy to welcome people once you know who they are. It's harder to welcome them when you don't. And that's the work." He paused. "I've worn the suits, driven the cars. I've had people open doors I never asked to be opened. But what I remember most, what really sticks, is who saw me when there was nothing to see." He looked to Emma. "I asked to sit at the same table today. Not because I wanted to relive something, but because that seat reminds me of who I am when no one knows." And then he added, "Find someone like that every day, someone you don't know, and see them. You'll surprise yourself." The room stayed quiet after he left. No applause again. Just a room full of people who realized something had changed in them. Emma stood by the wall, staring at the now empty chair near the kitchen doors. That chair would never be just a seat again. It was now the place where an unspoken truth was planted, where silence had grown into something powerful. Later, the manager called it the quiet revolution. It wasn't a slogan. It was a vow. And no one at La Lumière would ever forget where it began. It started showing up on reservation requests. "Any table is fine, except the one near the kitchen." Or sometimes, "If possible, the Shaquille table." The staff didn't laugh. They didn't roll their eyes. Because to them, that table had become more than furniture. It was memory. It was a reminder. Word spread, not in headlines, but through people. The woman who had once been ignored now brought her friends back and told the story herself. A couple from New York made a detour during vacation, just to sit where something real happened. Even influencers who came hoping to catch a glimpse of a celebrity stayed quiet longer than usual, half hoping they might witness another moment of truth. But it wasn't about Shaquille anymore. Not really. He had returned just twice more, always quietly, never staying long. His legacy wasn't in presence. It was in absence, in the things he left behind. Like the way the staff leaned in now, not away. Like the way Emma greeted everyone, from child to CEO, with the same clear gaze. That winter, the manager added a new section to staff orientation. He called it the kitchen table rule. Treat everyone like they could have been seated there, he told new hires, pointing to the chair near the swinging doors. Because one day, someone important will be, and you won't know it until later. The goal is to not care about that. No one questioned him. They understood. One slow evening, just before closing, Emma found herself sitting at that very table, not out of sentiment, but because it was the only place left untouched by silverware or bills. She sipped from a mug of mint tea, staring at the polished surface. The grain of the wood had a faint scratch running through it, barely visible, but unmistakably real, like the lesson it carried. She reached into her apron and unfolded a napkin. On it, she wrote with a pen she always carried now. They say silence doesn't teach. They're wrong. She didn't sign it. She tucked the note into a drawer by the service station and let it be. A few months later, a man walked into La Lumiere, wearing a bright green windbreaker, jeans, and a calm smile. No one recognized him. Not yet. Emma didn't blink. She smiled, welcomed him like any other, and offered a menu. When she walked away, another waitress leaned toward her. You think he's someone? Emma looked back at the man, who had just opened the menu and adjusted his reading glasses. She shrugged. Everyone is. The restaurant continued on. Plates changed, menus evolved, staff came and went. But that chair remained. Sometimes it sat empty. Sometimes someone unassuming filled it. But always, always, it meant something. Not because of who sat there, but because of who might.